She rejected him because he looked poor. Then she learned who he really was. The expensive hotel entrance fell silent for just 1 second before the laughter exploded. A young man wearing worn-out jeans, dusty shoes, and a faded gray shirt stood outside the grand ballroom holding nothing but an old envelope. His face carried exhaustion, but his eyes held quiet determination. Standing only a few feet away was the woman he had crossed the country to see, dressed in an elegant black evening gown, surrounded by wealthy friends. She looked at his torn clothes, turned her face away with disappointment, and rejected him before giving him a chance to explain. What nobody standing there realized was that within the next 24 hours, every single person in that crowd would wish they had treated that poor stranger differently. If you believe kindness should never depend on someone's appearance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to Every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the power to change a life. His name was Daniel Carter, a 34-year-old engineer whose life had once looked like the perfect American dream. Years earlier, he had built a successful technology company from the tiny garage behind his father's old house in Colorado. Long days and sleepless nights eventually transformed his simple invention into software that attracted investors from around the world. But unlike many entrepreneurs, Daniel never chased luxury. He cared more about solving problems than collecting expensive watches or driving flashy cars. When the company became successful, he quietly donated millions to children's hospitals, scholarships, and homeless shelters, always asking charities never to reveal his name. Then everything changed. A devastating legal battle over intellectual property forced Daniel to step away from his own company while the court sorted through complicated ownership disputes. During those difficult months, nearly all of his personal assets were frozen. He sold his sports car, moved into a small apartment, and traveled using buses and trains. His appearance slowly reflected the hardships he was facing. His clothes became old. His beard grew uneven. His expensive lifestyle disappeared, but his character never changed. Before the legal crisis, Daniel had spent nearly a year talking online with a successful interior designer named Olivia Bennett. They had never officially dated because business constantly kept them apart, yet they shared dreams, hopes, and countless late-night conversations. Olivia admired his intelligence and compassion without ever asking detailed questions about his finances. Daniel intentionally avoided discussing his wealth because he wanted someone to know him for who he truly was. Finally, after months apart, Olivia invited him to attend an elegant charity gala in Chicago where she was being honored for her community projects. Daniel's frozen accounts prevented him from buying new clothes or flying comfortably, but nothing stopped him from making the journey. He spent nearly 20 hours traveling by bus, carrying only a small backpack and an envelope containing a handwritten letter explaining everything. When Daniel arrived outside the luxurious hotel, he looked nothing like the successful entrepreneur everyone expected. Security guards hesitated before allowing him near the entrance. Guests wearing designer suits and sparkling dresses stared at him with confused expressions. Olivia noticed him approaching but only saw worn clothing instead of the man she thought she knew. Embarrassed by what her wealthy friends might think, she dismissed him before he could even hand her the letter. Her closest friends laughed openly, whispering that he must be a desperate stranger trying to meet someone far above his social status. Daniel stood silently for a few moments, feeling the weight of every judgment being placed upon him. Without defending himself, he simply left the envelope with a receptionist and quietly walked away into the rainy evening. That night Olivia barely thought about him again. The laughter of her friends echoed through the glamorous celebration while cameras flashed and music filled the ballroom. Yet something deep inside her refused to feel at peace. She remembered the sincerity she had always sensed in Daniel's messages. The image of disappointment on his face continued returning to her thoughts. The following morning everything changed. Breaking news flooded television stations across America. A federal judge had ruled completely in Daniel Carter's favor, restoring ownership of his technology company and releasing assets worth more than $3 billion. Financial reporters celebrated him as one of the youngest philanthropists in the country. News channels praised his anonymous donations that had quietly funded hospitals, disaster relief efforts, veterans housing, and thousands of college scholarships over the previous decade. Olivia nearly dropped her coffee as Daniel's photograph appeared on the screen. Although he now wore a tailored business suit during the interview, his gentle smile was exactly the same as the tired man she had rejected the night before. But what hurt her even more was not discovering his wealth. It was hearing the interviewer ask why he always kept his charitable work secret. Daniel answered that real kindness should never expect applause. He explained that people deserved dignity whether they wore expensive suits or torn shirts. He admitted that the hardest lesson of the previous year had not been losing money. It had been watching how differently strangers treated him when they believed he had nothing. Those words pierced Olivia's heart. She rushed back to the hotel hoping Daniel had not yet left the city. The receptionist handed her the envelope he had left behind. Inside was a handwritten letter explaining that his appearance reflected temporary hardship, not his true identity. More importantly, he wrote that he had wanted their friendship to be built on honesty rather than wealth. He thanked her for the happiness their conversations had brought him and wished her a beautiful future regardless of whether they ever met again. Tears filled Olivia's eyes as she realized she had failed the very test life had unknowingly placed before her. She spent days searching for Daniel, not because newspapers suddenly called him a billionaire, but because she desperately wanted to apologize for judging someone based on appearances. Eventually she discovered that Daniel was volunteering at a children's rehabilitation center, personally delivering new technology that helped disabled children communicate more easily. Instead of arriving with cameras or reporters, Olivia walked in quietly carrying children's books she had purchased herself. She watched Daniel spending hours sitting beside young patients, smiling, encouraging them, and celebrating every small achievement. There were no journalists documenting the moment. No business partners watching. No investors to impress. This was simply who he truly was. Olivia realized wealth had never made Daniel extraordinary. His heart had. When she finally apologized, Daniel listened with calm understanding. Life had already taught him that everyone makes mistakes. He admitted her rejection had hurt deeply, but bitterness would only create more pain. Forgiveness, he believed, allowed people to become better than their worst decisions. Over the following months they slowly rebuilt trust, not through expensive dinners or luxurious vacations, but by serving together at food banks, rebuilding damaged homes after storms, and supporting families struggling through difficult seasons. Olivia learned that character could never be measured by clothing, bank accounts, or appearances. Daniel learned that genuine remorse, followed by meaningful change, deserved another chance. Their friendship eventually grew stronger than either of them had imagined because it rested on something far more valuable than money: humility, forgiveness, and kindness. Years later, when people asked Daniel about the greatest investment he had ever made, they expected him to mention technology or business. Instead, he smiled and said the greatest investment anyone could make was believing in the goodness people were still capable of becoming. If this story has touched your heart, please support it by liking this video, sharing it with your family and friends, leaving your thoughts in the comments, and subscribing to Dot. Your support helps spread more stories that remind the world kindness still matters. Special request: before this story ends, please comment with the words, "Kindness sees the heart," if you believe people should always be judged by their character, not their appearance. Sometimes the poorest looking person carries the richest heart, and sometimes the greatest blessing we ever receive comes disguised as someone the world chooses to overlook. In the end, true wealth is not measured by what we own but by how we treat those who have nothing to offer us except their humanity. And that is the kind of treasure